Good morning, everyone. And I apologize for being late. I had the wrong room. You thought it was Valor building, went into Valor, searched the place, couldn't find the committee. But it's my fault, and so I take full responsibility for it. But I do apologize. And so we will begin the meeting. And as you know, today we're seeing witnesses. And the first one, as you know, there are rules for the witnesses here. There are 3 panels. And you're given 10 minutes, each panel. So at the end of the 10 minutes, and I will time you so that you know, we have a question and answer session. And so during the question and answer session, the first round is limited to 7 minutes for the questioners and the answerers. And so I'd hope that everybody would be as succinct as they can with their questions and with their answers. So thank you again and welcome. And so, as you know, today we have the Quebec Community Groups Network, we have the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, and we have TELUS. So, shall we begin with the Quebec Community Groups Network?
Good morning, Madam Chairman, bonjour, and members of the committee. I would like to thank you for inviting us to appear today as part of your study on the media and local communities. My name is Walter Duzara. I am the Secretary of the Board of Directors of the Quebec Community Groups Network. With me today on my left is Hugh Maynard, a past chairman of the QCGN and president of Quanglo Communications. Hugh has fulfilled many roles in English-speaking rural communities as a newspaper editor, CBC radio freelancer, and consultant in community development for everything from community radio to multimedia community websites. The QCGN is a not-for-profit representative organization that serves as a center of evidence-based expertise and collective action. QCGN is focused on strategic issues affecting the development and vitality of Canada's English linguistic minority communities, to which we collectively refer as the English-speaking community of Quebec. Our 48 members are also not-for-profit community groups. Most provide direct services to community members. Some work regionally, providing broad-based services. Others work across Quebec in specific sectors such as health and arts and culture. Our members include the Quebec Community Newspaper Association, QCNA. English-speaking Quebec is Canada's largest official language minority. A little more than 1 million Quebecers specify English as their first official language spoken. Although 84% of our community lives within the Montreal Census metropolitan area, more than 210,000 community members live in other regions of Quebec. We have here a copy of our detailed brief and an annual report of QCGN. Unfortunately, we did not have time to have it translated, but copies are available to you should you wish to have one. Our written submission goes into greater detail on the current media landscape and how dwindling media resources have impacted our community. This morning, we will concentrate mainly on proposing possible remedies, or at least ways to limit the damage. A vibrant, healthy, and diverse media serves to inform, encourage, embody, and advance public debate. It also provides a core indicator of the civic health of its community. Free-flowing, wide-ranging information and opinion enables and nourishes democracy. Local media that accurately reflects the community it serves is essential to help sustain democratic values and provide a framework for our communities to evolve. These values are of even greater importance in situations characterized by minority linguistic and cultural status. One of the roles of Canadian heritage is embodied in its explicit commitment to enhance the vitality of official language minority communities. We would contend that an important and fundamental element of a commitment is to support and assist our development would include ensuring access to information and news in the community's own language. It is in this context that we are addressing you. Our challenge as English-speaking Quebecers is to find ways to foster, support, and encourage quality media content that is local and relevant even as news consumers now turn to digital sources in ever greater numbers. Coverage of issues with a unique impact on Quebec's English-speaking population, the kind of in-depth, day-to-day coverage that can realistically come from no other source than local or regional media, has been thinned out and is endangered.
Good morning, Madam Chairperson, members of the committee. Bonjour, Madame Présidente et les membres du committee. Any question of providing commercial financial subsidies instantly raises an intractable set of fresh problems and must be rejected out of hand. Traditional boundaries governing government interaction with media ownership must remain in place. However, clear opportunities exist to encourage and foster the development of new community-based media vehicles to supplement existing local coverage and to help replace locally relevant content where it has been thinned and often disappeared. These ventures could be seeded so that they will have a chance to bloom in sometimes surprising and unexpected ways, including the digital sector. In some instances, they could help local media grow, or in some cases, establish a digital presence. Thus, we propose a substantive broadening of the Canadian Periodical Fund support mechanisms to include new and online media. This would require a concomitant increase in available financial resources. This would also offer the possibilities for collaboration between major institutions of our community, such as the CBC, universities and colleges. Many journalists get their start working for the CBC, which acts as a de facto training ground, providing the CBC and other local media with resources for internships in conjunction with university journalism and communications programs would help get some reporting boots on the ground and open the door for a new generation to become active in local and community media. Any financing for such projects should be channeled through third parties. In this vein, the 2006 Senate report on media recommended that the definition of charitable foundations be broadened to allow for not-for-profit media to be included in this part of the federal tax regime. In addition, a portion of Canadian Heritage Strategic Fund that's traditionally allocated to the development of official language minority community radio stations could be reoriented to include new community media ventures without excluding community radio. Two examples of this potential are the community hub websites gogaspé.com, you can reference the links in the report, and valleyjunction.ca, and I would declare my conflict of interest as being the owner of valleyjunction.ca, which so far has made $10 in Google ads, so at least we've got it started. These have been started by local individuals in the Gaspé, and where we're located in the Chateauguay Valley, southwest of Montreal. They're intended as information hubs for and about the communities they serve. Taking advantage of the internet and social media tools like Facebook and Twitter, they directly involve residents and community organizations who can post stories and announcements about their activities, providing one-stop shopping for community information with sections for business advertising, classified and legal notices. With an entrepreneurial approach, multiple sources could be packaged for such projects. The use of crowdsourcing could provide an additional lever effect for financing completely outside any government orbit. Since 4 out of 5 Canadians continue to read a newspaper at least once a week, our focus is not just on digital alternatives. Federal government spending on advertising in newspapers has fallen sharply in recent years. According to one report, this figure has plunged to $357,000 in 2014-15 from roughly $20 million about 10 years ago. Room clearly exists to restore government ad placement with an emphasis on newspapers that cover local news. CBC Radio-Canada, a major source of news for many local communities, receives $946 million a year, and an additional $60 million annually has been promised, about $1 billion in total. QCGN believes that much of that stabilized funding should be used to restore local coverage in the regions. Minority language community newspaper associations have further recommended that 1% of that $1 billion, or $10 million, be allocated to minority community newspapers or their associations to support member services, sustainability, education, recognition and retention of English and French language journalists. This suggestion by the QCNA and its francophone counterparts is a good one that we believe could be broadened. We suggest the creation of a community media foundation, like the Community Radio Foundation, to support community media all across all platforms, as well as new media ventures such as the ones that we've suggested earlier. We recommend support would require evidence of community ownership or involvement. This could be twinned with a paid internship fund to get journalism students to support such initiatives, and this latter idea could be structured as a government summer jobs or internship programs, such as the Young Canada Works in Both Official Languages program. Thank you.
Oh, I
A
was
remarkably,
Do you have 1 minute?
1 minute.
Sorry, yes.
A remarkably broad variety of community journalism models are emerging, harking to a recurring theme that these are vulnerable to faltering and even failure. In the United States, the so-called hyperlocal news projects established and operated by the Washington Post, the New York Times, and the Gannett Chain have all been shut. Broadband continues to be limited in the regions, as indicated by a freshly issued CRTC map produced in conjunction with a new hearing on basic telecommunications services. It is essential to reinforce the notion that accessible and adequate broadband services in rural communities is an important, if not an essential, instrument of development of our official language minority communities. We must also not ignore the demographics. Many older citizens, most accustomed to print, radio, and television, are shut out of democratic discourse carried out online. The decline of print
Mr.
largely...
Desar, could you round out your sentence, because we're now over 10 minutes.
I'm sorry?
Could you round out your sentence? We're over 10 minutes.
Just do the conclusion.
Just do your conclusion quickly.
Very well. We believe the recommendations that we outlined in our report will help lay the groundwork to encourage a fuller spectrum of healthy community media for the digital era, especially as it impacts official language minority communities.
Thank you very much. And now we will go to Mr. Morrison from Friends of Canadian Broadcasting.
Madam Chair, I was going to congratulate you on the longevity of your survival as a Member of Parliament, but I don't have time to do that.
Touché, Mr. Morrison, touché.
Madame la Présidente et membres du comité.
Madam Chair and committee members, thanks for inviting the Friends to appear today. My name is Ian Morrison. With me is Peter Miller here at my side, who has broad expertise in Canadian media issues, including local television, which, as you know, is synonymous with local TV news.
Television is the most important source of local news in Canada. A December 2015 survey by Think TV asked Canadian adults, which one of the following media is your primary source of local news? 36% chose television, eclipsing newspapers at 23%, radio at 20%, and the internet at 18%. Peter collaborated with Nordicity to analyze the economic impact of the CRTC's Let's Talk TV policies in a major research report entitled Canadian Television 2020 Technological and Regulatory Impacts, released earlier this year. Its key findings are that by 2020, 15,130 media jobs will be lost. There will be a $400 million drop in Canadian program expenditures, that's 18% of what now exists, and a $1.4 billion hit to Canada's GDP. All of this as the direct result of Let's Talk TV regulatory changes. The CRTC has yet to release any economic assessment of the impact of Let's Talk TV, suggesting a lapse in evidence-based decision-making. This loss has nothing to do with technological change and will greatly harm the future viability of local television news. The research study's authors have advanced proposals to reduce the negative impact of the CRTC's decisions by as much as 75%, and I'm quoting, "This would not, in our view, require turning back the clock on all the Let's Talk TV decisions. It would merely require relatively minor tweaking that recognizes Canadians as broadcasting policy has always recognized them, not merely as consumers, but as creators and citizens too." Compounding this hit, television stations in small and medium markets are particularly vulnerable to adverse economic trends. According to a second Nordicity Miller study entitled Near-Term Prospects for Local TV in Canada, this study's conclusion is that, I'm quoting, "Canada's local television heritage is at risk of major cutbacks and station closures, which could be avoided, deferred, or minimized by the CRTC's contemplated reallocation of mandatory broadcast distribution, that's BDU, local expression contributions, if focused on small, private, and medium market TV stations. The near-term prospect study projects that up to half of local stations in small and medium markets, where there is often no local TV alternative, will fade to black by 2020 in the absence of CRTC action. This would lead to an estimated 910 layoffs of journalists and others who work to put local news on the air. The study also found that the most vulnerable stations are independently owned and in small markets such as, and Madam Chair, I won't read out the names of 35 Canadian cities here, it's in my remarks. When large market local stations are included, the study projects job losses of 3,490. As you know, local TV, especially news, is very popular with Canadians. A recent Nanos research poll found that 92% agree that local news is valuable to them, and 90% agree that their federal member of parliament should work to keep local broadcasting strong in their community. So, what can be done to protect local television news? First, tax policy. Internet advertising is driving structural change. First in print, now in television, as spending has increased eightfold to $3.5 billion since 2006. That's more than a third of all Canadian advertising. Yet federal policies to support local media have not changed since the 1990s. The Income Tax Act should be updated to exclude tax deductibility for foreign-owned or controlled internet advertising platforms, in addition to cross-border broadcasters and newspapers as now exists. Tax deductibility should be restricted to Canadian-owned internet sites. Australia has recently moved to require Netflix-like foreign program distributors to collect sales tax. Rogers Show Me and Bell's Crave TV collect sales tax from Canadian customers, but not their direct competitor, Netflix. The Canadian Film or Video Production Tax Credit supports most independently produced Canadian programming other than local programming. You should recommend amending the eligibility rules to permit support for local news programming produced by local broadcasters. And we recommend that you invite officials from the Department of Finance to appear to outline options to keep more Canadian ad spending and subscribers' money in Canada.
We've got 4 more minutes for your group.
And I have 4 more minutes to speak to. Second, CRTC policies. The government has the right under Sections 7, 15, 26, and 28 of the Broadcasting Act to ask the Commission to reconsider decisions and policies in view of the government's broadcasting policies and priorities. You should recommend that the government instruct the Commission to increase BDU contributions in support of local television, amend the Digital Media Exemption Order to require foreign and domestic over-the-top, that's OTT, television broadcasters to contribute to Canadian programming, and ensure that Internet service providers and mobile operators are required to give priority to Internet-distributed Canadian local media through such measures as exemption from bandwidth caps. You should ask the CRTC chair to appear once the local television hearing decisions are announced. You should pose some questions about recent TV policies, including why under Let's Talk TV, a majority of programs aired by Canadian broadcasters will no longer be required to be Canadian. A majority of channels distributed into Canadian households will no longer be required to be Canadian, and foreign broadcasters that distribute programs into Canadian households do not play by the same rules as Canadian broadcasters. You should ask him to present evidence to support his statement that there is enough money in the system to fix the threats to local television, especially in small and medium markets. If you're not satisfied with his response, you should consider recommending to the government that it direct the Commission to make the survival of local television a priority. Third, the 600 megahertz spectrum auction. Next year, the spectrum will be repurposed in Canada and the United States. This will force Canadian broadcasters to purchase new transmission technology. Congress has allocated a portion of the windfall of that relocation to encourage local broadcasters to have the money to buy new transmitters. Canada has not done so. Funding this capital cost could make all the difference for independently owned stations in small markets for a small portion of the windfall. Fourth, study measures adopted in the United States where local broadcasters benefit from numerous measures to strengthen local TV, including local market rights protection rules, strong restrictions on the importation of distant signals on US DTH, and the doctrine of retransmission consent. And finally, your committee should consider holding hearings in some of the small cities where local television news is most threatened. A good short list would include St. John's, Rivière-du-Loup, Peterborough, and Kamloops. Madame la Présidente, voilà.
Madam Chair, that's all we can pack into 10 minutes. We did not even mention the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Peter and I, though, would be very happy to respond to any questions from committee members, and we wish you success in your very important work. 10 minutes.
It's about 1 minute to go. So excellent. Well done. Thank you, Mr. Morrison. And so we'll move to the questions, and we begin with the Liberals. For Mr. Van Daal.
Thank you. Thank you very much for your presentation. We've heard from delegations in the last few weeks, including our own Heritage Department, that funding for local production across Canada has actually increased in the last few years. But that's not what we're hearing from both the delegations. So I'm wondering if Ian or Peter, you can begin by commenting on that. Is that how do we explain that if funding has actually increased if you're saying that there's actually been cutbacks?
I had the opportunity to read the transcript of the Canadian Heritage officials. I think part of the problem is that we're dealing with dated data. So very often the data that you receive is just to 2014, and some of the declines we haven't seen since then. And the declines right now, to be honest, are fairly small because despite declines in conventional television advertising, the major vertically integrated conglomerates have continued to fund local programming and use the synergies with their specialty services and other assets to maintain revenue. So what you've seen is a massive decline in profitability, and I think you have received some numbers on that. The profitability of conventional television, for example, as of last year was something, and I'm guessing, but I seem to recall it was something in the neighborhood of minus 16%. So we've seen massive declines in profitability. To their credit, the operators of all local television stations, be they the larger companies or the smaller independents, are doing what they can to keep money in local TV, but it's not sustainable, and that's really the problem going forward. Just because we haven't seen it yet doesn't mean it isn't a problem.
And Mr. Van Daal, I would just add that if you had to focus on one group of local television stations, it would be, there are 23 of them in fact, and they are members of a coalition called the Small Market Independent Television Stations Coalition. These are not part of the vertically integrated companies, and they're operating in the under 300,000 markets. Think Thunder Bay, think Rivière-du-Loup, think Kamloops.
And are some of the difficulties overrepresented or disproportionately affected in the news, the local news section? Is that something that you can comment on?
We'll cooperate, Peter and I, okay?
Okay.
Local news is the predominant local programming of television stations. They tend to go to networks or to feed from elsewhere for most of their other programming. So while it's not, I said at the beginning that it's local news is synonymous with local television, it's the preponderant type of programming that is produced and broadcast locally. Peter, do you want to fine-tune that?
The only other thing I can add is the regulatory system up till now has regulated local news by having an hour commitment. So in small markets, the small English language markets, the hour commitment is a minimum of 7 hours a week. In Francophone markets, and a minimum of 5 hours a week, and that goes up to 14 and 10 hours respectively in larger markets. And the economics of producing local television news is, you need a certain number of people to do it. You need a certain number of shifts. The only way you can achieve it is have a certain amount of money in the field to make it happen. Otherwise, you don't have a quality product. So people have managed to maintain their newscasts. There's been some discussion around this committee about some of the practices of centralization that take away, if you will, some of the local flavor of local news. But for the most part, they've managed to maintain the infrastructure.
Mr. Miller, our time is going fast. I'd like to move to another question. In your brief, you recommend, or you make mention of, a reallocation of mandatory broadcast distribution BDUs contributions. A reallocation of BDUs contributions. I have some experience as former chair of APTN with the 91H section. Is that what you're talking about? And can you give some context, maybe some historical context on what has been done in the past and what can be done in the future?
This is the issue that's very much before the CRTC right now. You heard a little bit from Scott Hutton when he appeared from the Commission. And the basic premise is that right now distributors tell us, who you'll hear from later this morning is one of them, contribute 5% of their total broadcast revenues to Canadian programming. It's split up in different ways. Up until now, 2% or less went to community expression, which went to what we commonly call the community channel. And the thing under consideration right now is to reallocate some of that money to local news. And you'll hear more when the Commission makes its decision. And I think what Mr. Morrison is saying is that you should assess that and make a determination as to whether you think it's adequate.
Also, Mr. Van Daal, with respect to the comment about the advice of heritage officials, I would put it this way. If the conclusion they're moving to is wrong, there will be a real crisis in this country. If it is right, well, that's good news. But the old adage of an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. We're here talking about problems that will become much more substantial if unaddressed towards the end of the life of this Parliament.
Okay. Moving on to the group from Quebec. Could you mentioned the challenges is facing quality local news, and I imagine you're talking about quality English local news in Quebec.
Yes.
Could you expound on that? Can you give me a little more detail on what exactly the problem is?
Well, there are numerous problems. In the first place, the staff cuts represent basically no reporting on legislation in Quebec at the municipal and provincial level in English, with the cutbacks to the staffs in Quebec City. The local reporters no longer work in the regions. There are very few and far between. What we see is basically almost the complete disappearance of any kind of professional, reflective, journalistic considerations shared with the English-speaking public, particularly in the regions, but also that it's true right across the province.
So you represent the English-speaking minority of Quebec?
We speak on behalf of the needs of the English-speaking minority of Quebec,
and
yes.
I would imagine, excuse my...
Mr. Van Daal, finish your question, but the time is up.
Okay, well, I would imagine most of the English-speaking are actually in urban centers and not the rural areas.
80-some% are in the Montreal, but there are 210,000 living in the rural areas spread out across the entire province.
Thank you. And now we go to Mr. Waugh for the Conservatives.
Well, thank you. I was on your website last night for quite a bit of time on the Quebec Community Group Network. Maybe just talk about your organization. You send emails out more than anything. You have a number of, well, I see all your groups here that you represent. You have a big umbrella here. So, but it's more emails that you send out as your organization, and you have a lot of educators with your organization, and I know you've talked extensively about CJAD radio and the Montreal Gazette and so on, and CBC, but maybe just talk about your organization on the emails that you send out for information for English.
The organization is an umbrella organization that brings together, at this point, 48 different groups. The groups provide services directly to the population by and large. Many of them are local, many of them are also regional in scope. The kinds of activities that they cover range from the arts to health and social services to education. So there is a wide swath of expertise and a wide swath of information that is covered. The mechanisms that are in place include the use of the internet services and the use of the website and the use of basically information accessible on the website of QCGN. There is a daily news feature that we have that regroups all of the activities that impact English-speaking Quebec in terms of news locally as well as nationally. There is a weekly news that is sent to the member organizations that brings them up to date on issues, particularly that affect perhaps policy considerations. There is an annual general meeting to which the community is invited. There are different activities that we organize to encourage participation of different groups and individuals from around the province. So the email is an important aspect of our communication tools, but it's one of many. The QCGN is also actively involved in expanding its member organizations, the numbers. If I'm not mistaken, we currently are awaiting the something like 18 new organizations to join our community. So QCGN is becoming basically a voice for the English-speaking community. It works on collecting evidence of what is happening, what the issues are. It has a standing mechanism of identifying the kinds of activities that take place within the framework of a set of priorities that were identified by the community some 5 years ago. It surveys the community on an annual basis and reports on the kinds of activities under each of the 6 priority areas that have been established.
I've only got 7 minutes here, so we're going to tighten this up. You're not for profit, so how do you guys get your funding, and how much funding do you get from Heritage?
We get, I'm not sure what the exact number is, but less than $1 million from Heritage Canada in core funding, and then there are project funding that the organization is involved in with the member organizations.
Evidence-based, talk about that. Your expertise, what's that all about?
Well, we have a director of policy. We engage friends from the community who are academics, who are experts in their field, who do work for us and support us in the work that we do. We ensure that we have people engaged in looking at all of the reports that are developed by Statistics Canada, for example, and other agencies. We are in contact with the federal agencies that are engaged in providing services to the minority language communities across Canada, and we ensure that the kind of information that we have is objective, is well-founded, is validated before we put forward any sorts of recommendations and policy statements.
Good, thank you very much. I'm going to move over now to Mr. Miller and Mr. Morrison. We all know the small markets in this country. There's 33 of them, 23 medium, and we talk about that. There's just one thing. When Bell Media talked to CRTC, and they estimated that their local TV stations lost $12 million last year. I would refute that, and the statement is, when you bundle stations now, you know that CBC, Global, and CTV stations have to be included in that $25 bundle. So while Bell can say all local stations lost $12 million as a total of CTV, I would say that when you do buy the bundle, you also get their TV stations from coast to coast to coast.
We've been about 1 month into that Skinny Basic, and the best estimates I've seen, Mr. Waugh, are that about 4% of Canadians will go for it. So I think if whether or not Bell is making or losing $12 million on something, Peter can give you some decimal points. My overview would be to say that please keep your eye on those small markets. I know you're familiar with the situation at Lloydminster, for example. Think Lloydminster, think Thunder Bay, and think the companies that are not affiliated, the stations that are not affiliated with the large integrated companies as being the priorities.
Well, you challenged the CRTC, if you don't mind, Mr. Miller, that there's not enough money in the system to adequately finance local TV right now. So just can you elaborate on that?
I'd be happy to. And can I go back to your previous question just to be clear? Okay, I'll be very fast. The stations in that bundle, the Global, the Bell, don't get any of that $25.
That's right. I know that.
So that's
I know that.
In terms of whether there's money in the system, what we looked at is projections for profitability of local TV, and we looked at what we call the revenue gap. In other words, what kind of gap we have in the system for conventional television, and we compared that to the money the CRTC was looking at for reallocation to local TV, and we predict that within 4 or 5 years there wouldn't be enough money. So what the CRTC does, in our view, would be a short-term solution to a bigger problem, which is why I think Mr. Morrison is recommending that you look at things like advertising tax deductibility, because there isn't going to be enough money in the system to solve the problem.
Thank you very much. And now we go to Mr. Nantel for the NDP.
Merci, Madame la Présidente. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to welcome all of you here this morning. You're all very competent, and you are all very able to speak to the technological change and the dangers that poses to the cultural entity. I do have a question for you. I have to say I'm very, very happy to see that the Friends of Canadian Broadcasting are so stringent in their approach. For your association, sir, can you speak to this? I'm sure that there has been no greater contribution to the cultural life in Quebec. There's been a very healthy professionalization of the cultural system in Quebec that has fostered artists. I know that you are community-based, like Go Gaspé, and that's very helpful, but also Imprimé Radio, other local areas is very important. There is much outreach that you have to small communities. My question, with respect to internet services, if, for example, there were to be an update in the funding of these programs, that would involve internet programming, would that have an impact on what you do, on the minimum, if you like, of services are in Montreal, Quebec? They are served, well served, but they are served by the internet. If you don't mind, I will answer your question in English.
Has been a boon to being able to reach different communities and different groups from around the province and in the various centers of the province. However, it does not necessarily trickle down to the individual. In the regions in particular, access to broadband is difficult in many areas, impossible in some, and expensive everywhere. The kinds of people, if you look at the demographics of our population, somewhere in the vicinity of 25% are seniors. And not all seniors are comfortable with technology. Okay. Technology has basically invaded our space, whether we were ready or not. Some have been ready, some were not. So putting all the emphasis on the broadband or on digital media is not necessarily going to respond to the needs of the individuals. There is an important feature to the digital aspects, if you like, or the digitization of information, digital media, but it requires a support mechanism to be able to do what it needs to do. Our big concern is that the notion of local news and local information and being able to provide information that is analyzed from the perspective of the minority, the English-speaking minority, that capacity has been eroded to the point where it has almost disappeared. So that is the area that we're looking at most. And our recommendations, when you have a chance to see the report, will point to directions that we as spokesmen for the English-speaking minority feel require attention. Moving towards ensuring that we have quality information available to our communities, moving towards ensuring that we protect some of the services that we have now, moving towards also engaging in not the protection necessarily of the media outlets that are there, but protecting the capacity building to ensure that as we move forward in time, young journalists, young entrepreneurs, young people have the resources to be able to experiment, to put forward new ideas, to make mistakes, to learn from mistakes and go forward. That capacity right now is not there, and the capacity of our existing media sources is diminishing quickly and disappearing quickly.
Thank you very much. So back to Friends of Canadian Broadcasting, Mr. Morrison, Mr. Miller, thank you so much. Thank you for that huge report that brought so much light to the situation. Reality is that hearing you speak, I realize that we really should have Mr. Blais from the CRTC back here, because we have huge issues, and I think that his choices, his way of seeing things has been quite drastic. And so it brings me to ask you a very specific question. I remember having the CRTC and the industry representative and the heritage people here, and I realized that, merci, je vais y aller en français, ça va être plus vite.
I'll continue in French, it'll be quicker. Do you not think that the CRTC is perhaps overreaching itself in terms of consumers' rights? Its legal mandate is not to deal with consumers, but to deal with communications and the diversity of voices.
If you look at the Broadcasting Act digitally and search for the word consumer, you will find it towards the end around some of the powers of the CBC to sell goods and services to consumers. And that's the only reference in the Broadcasting Act. The former government, in the throne speech of 2013, did instruct the CRTC to unbundle. And Mr. Blais got it right. He did what he was told. He forgot the last 4 words that came out of the Governor-General's mouth, which was, while preserving Canadian jobs.
That's right.
Okay? And so that's a sea change. And I mentioned in my remarks some of the things that have gone by the way, like no longer a majority of programs in our system are Canadian. No longer a majority of channels reaching Canadian homes are Canadian. Not treating the internet-delivered programmers the same way as others. Those things have gone by the wayside, but fundamentally, I think in addition to that, what the CRTC must answer for is how it would introduce a whole new regime for television in Canada without costing it, without studying it, without finding out the economic impact. Peter?
I can add something this year.
Until 15
Sales
seconds.
tax on Netflix.
Sales tax on Netflix, okay. Now for 7 minutes, Mr. O'Regan from the Liberals.
Now, let me pick up on where my colleague actually just left off, Monsieur Nantel, and what would your response be then to the proposal? Because, I mean, this is something that many people hold here near and dear, the idea of taxing Netflix. What would your response be to people who immediately would fill the open line shows and protest such an idea?
Okay. Well, first, as I mentioned in my, if I were in charge, and I would develop a list.
Think of that, Mr. Morrison.
If I were in charge, I would develop a list of things that the over-the-top providers should be doing. And at the very top of the list would be that they should be collecting the same taxes from Canadians as Canadian competitors do. It's just not fair that I can, well, until recently it was $7.99 a month. I see Netflix raised it by 30% in my morning feed, okay? But supposing it's their new fee of $9.99, I just send them $9.99. But if Rogers charges me $9.99 for Show Me, I send them $9.99. I live in Ontario, plus 13%. So that's number one. They should be there should be a level playing field for Canadian consumption taxes in the audiovisual system. But beyond that, you'll find effectively that Canadian broadcasters are, they're not taxed. They're required through regulation under the Broadcasting Act to put about 30% of their revenues into Canadian content. And you go down to the distributors, the Rogers, the Shaws, the Videotrons, they're required to put about 5% of their revenues into Canadian content. Why would we allow a foreign company to come into Canada, reaching Canadian homes, and to put zero, nada, into Canadian content? It's just not appropriate. Now, if there were no problems with the system, maybe other things would be more important. But I think we presented evidence, and others will, that there's a crisis in the system. And therefore, everyone should be contributing something.
Let me ask you something that you brought up at the end of your report regarding the Trans-Pacific Partnership. Let me ask you if maybe you could delve into that.
What would we have said had we had 11 minutes?
I'm giving it to you.
Go ahead, Peter.
First of all, obviously, it's very hard to get clarity on the impact of that agreement on the cultural sector. What it appears to do is preserve the existing measures, the ones that we have. The risk is that it precludes future measures. So, for example, there's a school of thought that says exactly what Mr. Morrison described. Sometimes a contribution from a Netflix would not be allowed under the TPP. I'm not a trade lawyer. I will not give you an opinion on that. That would be overreaching. But I do think it's an important area for the committee, and I think given the government's commitment to look at the TPP and its implications, I think Justice needs to come out and say what its view is as to what the agreement's going to mean going forward.
Let me interrupt them just for the point of clarification. So basically, any interventions that this committee may recommend, depending on timing and ratification of the Trans-Pacific Partnership, would be impossible?
Well, it's possible they would be impossible. But that's, I don't know. I'm not a trade lawyer, and I'm not going to suggest equivocally one way or other. But, if you've looked at this yourselves, there's a well-known Ottawa academic, Michael Geist, that has actually written that it looks like it preserves cultural protection. There's a well-known cultural nationalist lawyer named Peter Grant that said that he thinks it's okay. So you've got these differing views, and I'm not going to.
We believe Mr. Grant, Mr. O'Regan, but the main point is you're not looking at two TPP experts here, but you're looking at two people who are saying to you, why don't you investigate that? You have access to the best brains in the Department of Justice if you choose to ask them some questions. It's a worthwhile thing to look into.
Time, Madam Chair?
3 minutes?
Okay.
Oh, actually, 2 minutes.
So let me ask you then, give you maybe an opportunity maybe to address best practices. When you talk about Canadian content and the promotion or protection of Canadian content, what are some of the better practices that you've seen in comparable economies, obviously outside of the United States, but I'm thinking more of European countries and Australia in terms of the amount of national content and how they go about their cultural industries through demanding what carriers, whether they be foreign carriers that broadcast within or domestic carriers, what percentages do they ask be of local content or national content, but domestic content?
None of them, and I'm coming to Peter within the time frame, none of them have faced for as long and face for as strongly as the English-speaking part of Canada does. The huge, it used to be called satellite rain of Hollywood into their country. So Canada has had a continuing struggle since the early days of the CRTC and before to maintain a share of content, a share of shelf space for Canadian content. And until Let's Talk TV, the CRTC has always been trying to build and maintain that. Peter?
let me say that when we look at Canadian content, we look at it in different ways. There's been, for those of you that have observed it, a real switch to look at the economic benefits of production. So we talk a lot about that. And we haven't talked as much about the cultural benefits. The other thing, and this is what's vital to this committee, the big shift, the big trend, is that high-end drama is now easier to do than it ever used to be. Why? Because we in this country have got better at it, and we got better at partnerships and co-productions and exporting. So if you're producing the high end, there's demand for it, where this is the golden age of television. So there's demand for it, and you have an export market you go to. But if you're producing local news, you're relying on an ever diminishing local advertising pool, and there's nowhere else for it to go. So that's why we are in this unique period where the local stuff, which used to be completely profitable, you know, local newspapers, local television stations used to be hugely profitable. They're the ones that are vulnerable. And the things that we, you know, have worried about for 20, 30 years, we're actually doing okay in that, relatively speaking.
Thank you very much, Mr. Miller. And now we go to Mr. Maguire for the Conservatives for 5 minutes. We're going to the second round, and this is a 5-minute round.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just wanted to ask a couple of questions in regards to our Quebec Community Groups Network. You'd mentioned your 48 members, I believe, Walter, in regards to your organization, your network. You've got 1 million English Quebecers, concentrated around Montreal with a couple 100,000 in other areas. You've talked about how local media was endangered. I'd like you to elaborate a little bit more on that. The values, the democratic values, that sort of thing that you talked about. You mentioned the Canadian Periodical Fund and the Canadian Heritage Strategic Fund, and I'd like you to go into a little bit more of how they impact you as well. But you also mentioned that the broadband continues to be a limiting factor, I wrote down here, and I wondered if you could just expand on that as well.
Okay, which one first? The local?
Go ahead with the local again.
Here's an example of local. This is a French language delivered to everybody weekly in my area, and the local English paper has met its demise, and as a result gets 2 pages in the middle. So those are 3 articles translated from French into English, and if you will notice, rather poorly so. And I'm not criticizing the French language publication, but the fact is the demise of the local media and the coverage in the news has become quite difficult. And outside of the Montreal, this is becoming the rule rather than the exception. So how do we replace that? We talked a bit about some of the multimedia models, and into the second part, I think really what that needs, and I'll give you an example, in the Magdalen Islands, Gros Isle, which is about 700 Anglophones, lost their weekly newspaper 5 years ago and have been trying to find a way to collaborate with the local French language paper, with the local French language community radio station, and also to provide their seniors with a publication and those kinds of things. They have a business plan, they have a model, it's all ready to go, they just don't have any competent personnel that can run it. So that's when we talk about, with this fund, is there a way to take a young journalist out of Concordia University, put them down on the Magdalen Islands for a year, give them an internship, some experience, ship them back, they're trained a little bit, but it gives the community some expertise, some element that they can get these things going forward. And then lastly, with regards to the internet, I live an hour southwest of Montreal, and it's basically about every 10 years when something starts in Montreal, we get it where I live. Now, the further east or further north or west you go, the more difficult it gets. And the Canadian government, quite frankly, has made commitments repeatedly over the last 20 years of all political stripes, not the NDP, of course, but the other ones, that to commit to rural broadband, and nothing has really substantially happened. And so the commitment in the latest budget would be a good idea if we could get that in there and expand the rural internet, because it is quite essential to all kinds of economic development, especially media delivery.
Okay, thank you. I have seen it expanding in southern Manitoba, and I'm a man just from the province that I'm in. I'm imagining that your example then could be dealt with in regards to the flip side of that with other minority languages in other parts of Canada where English is more predominant. And, and you would say that that would be a corollary of what you're doing as well?
Yeah. And so when you look at, for example, mentioned the Community Radio Fund that's traditionally supported the establishment of community radio stations, there's a financial resource that could be devoted to helping establish some of these other alternatives, not excluding, of course, community radio, because I think it's still very pertinent in rural areas. But I think it needs to take a fresh look at the changes that have occurred and the fact that it is very difficult for any community now to print a newspaper, just the cost of printing and distribution, and to take a look at some of these new models that combine different kinds of media together on a local basis. Key to that is having some competence, some young journalists or some technicians that can help deliver it.
My last question would be to both groups. Perhaps we've seen in some of the presentations here that a lot of the, some of the local television news is in pretty good shape south of the border, and I'm just wondering if there's anything that we can learn from the Americans to strengthen the local TV news that we have here, and just wonder if who could answer that. Who wants to answer that?
Well,
I am sorry, there is no time left to answer that question, Mr. Maguire, but perhaps if the witnesses would like to send that in writing to us, we would be pleased to accept it.
We would be pleased to send you a detailed comment on that. Yes.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And now we go to Mr. Fillmore from the Liberals.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you all for being here today, and moreover, thanks, and I commend you for your work that you're doing to maintain balanced access to French and English media. I wanted to just address the guests from QCGN today. Half of my family are Montrealers, and I know from lived experience that access to Anglophone content is readily available there. So I want to kind of focus on that I think it was 16% of your target audience that lives outside of Montreal and in many cases in rural and smaller communities who also deserve access to English and locally relevant content, be it through traditional outlets or digital outlets. So I'll ask my question in three parts, and I'll just invite you to apportion it in the time that remains in any way that you'd like. The first is, what is the current state of affairs outside of Montreal and in rural communities for their access to locally relevant and English content? The second part would be, what's in your work plan to help improve that situation? And the third piece is, what can this committee do, and what can the Government of Canada do to accelerate and help that work that you're trying to do? Thank you.
I'll take the first one, you take the second one?
Go ahead.
Okay, so the state here is outside of Montreal. You have the CBC with a radio broadcast out of Quebec City. And then you have 5, 6 local community radio stations, and at this point, less than 10 English language community newspapers, all of which are in either of limited range or in quite a bit of difficulty. So actually attaching to the question from before, a lot of the English-speaking rural community is within access of radio and television from the United States, as well as, Derby Line in Vermont and publications. So there's easy access to English language media, but there's not very easy access to local English language media. So there's CNN, there's lots of news on the airways, but getting that local coverage. And so that comes back to questions of density of population. Obviously, Magdalen Islands with 700 people is going to be very difficult to support a weekly newspaper again. But also, when you look at those institutions on the island of Montreal, they have great difficulty getting off. So, for example, I work mainly in agriculture, so I get calls from CTV and the other news outlets about what's going on with the crops or the weather. But when you say you're an hour from Montreal, they won't come out. Unless there's a flood or an accident or some great event, they just won't bother. So the coverage is quite minimal. In terms of the plans?
In terms of the plans, I think what we're asking for here is consideration of creating an environment that invites experimentation, creating an environment that invites younger people, provides younger people with an opportunity to develop their craft, to develop perhaps new products, that can be totally unanticipated. If you're trying to seed a sphere of activity that we see right now, the old model, the old business model is failing. It's not working any longer. If you're trying to find a solution, you won't necessarily have a solution. You have to provide opportunity for many possibilities, and from those possibilities you learn certain lessons, and at the end of the day you may come up with 2 or 3 or 4 solutions. There's no one magic bullet. Our concern is that as we speak today, the quality of the journalistic efforts that are made in terms of being able to analyze issues that are at the provincial level, municipal level, that impact our community, that quality has dropped dramatically. The capacity to do that work in many areas no longer exists. The need is as important as it ever was. The exclusion of certain parts of our population is very, very dramatic. And we need to be able to work together to try to support a new kind of spirit of innovation in the whole area of media and in the entire area of the capacity that we now have through the internet, through broadband communications. We don't have a solution, but we're asking this committee to look at the potential for solution for creating an environment that will allow us to engage our community in seeking out solutions in partnership with our neighbors.
Thank you, Mr. Tsara. And that brings an end to this session. And I want to thank our witnesses for coming and for giving us quite a lot of very innovative recommendations and some clear recommendations. And so I would like to thank you, and we will now have a break until TELUS comes on, just for a couple of minutes. Thank you. And now we have TELUS. Welcome, Ms. Merville Neeson and Mr. April. Thank you for coming. As you know, you have 10 minutes. I will give you actually a 2-minute. So just look at me occasionally, so I don't have to speak out to interrupt you, but I'll give you a 2 minutes so that you can wind down, and then we will go to the questions and answers. Thank you. That's good. Begin.
Thank you very much. Good morning, and thank you very much for the opportunity to appear before you on this very important issue of media and local communities. My name is Anne Mainville Neeson, and I'm Vice President of Broadcasting Policy and Regulatory Affairs at TELUS. With me is Frédéric April, who manages our French language community station called Ma Communauté for TELUS's Optic TV. TELUS is one of Canada's large telecommunications provider, and we're well known for our commercials with the nice little animals. But we also provide an IPTV-based TV service called Optic TV. It's an alternative to the cable and satellite companies. Optic TV is available in Alberta, British Columbia, and Quebec. Unlike our competitors who take an ownership stake in the content programming services and the networks that distribute these services, TELUS does not own any programming services, so we are not vertically integrated. Like most cable TV companies, though, we do operate a community television service, which is a public service that we offer in the areas in which we offer TV service. Our approach to community programming is different from our competitors as well, though. First, instead of operating a traditional community channel, the likes of which I'm sure you're familiar with here in Ottawa, TELUS Optic Local programming breaks free from the scheduled channel, and instead we offer our programming on demand. That allows us to offer convenience to our customers, but also to break free from the scheduling, so we can offer programming in the length in which the programming requires. It could be a bite-sized bit of information, or it could be a longer form documentary, or whatever the programming length is required for the content itself to be expressed. Second, our community programming service is not only available on our Optic TV video on demand service, it's also available completely free online on our YouTube channel. We believe that it's important for our communities to be served with programming available regardless of the television service provider that customers choose. So we make our content available to everyone. We want the programming to be watched, not just by our own customers, by as many people as possible, including people living in the surrounding region, province, and indeed the country and around the globe. Most importantly, what truly distinguishes TELUS's community programming is our heavy reliance on programming created by independent producers who reside in the local communities. TELUS does not operate local studios for the creation of community programming. Rather, TELUS provides the voice to the communities served by Optic TV through funding for the local producers who can work at their creative arts in the communities in which they reside. TELUS's investment in Optic Local and Ma Communauté, as well as its approach to production and availability of community programming, reflect the philanthropic philosophy and commitment to the communities that we serve. TELUS is proud to support sustainable communities and strong social outcomes. Providing a platform for community members to share stories and get informed on local issues is one of the ways that we give back to the communities. TELUS recently participated in the CRTC's review of the regulatory framework for local and community programming. And one of the matters which was discussed, as Peter Miller has just informed the committee, was the determination of whether support was needed for the creation of local news by the television broadcasters. In that proceeding, TELUS argued strenuously that the CRTC should not adopt a subsidy model for the production of traditional newscasts, and we did so for two reasons. The first reason is that TELUS is concerned that such a subsidy would be implemented at the expense of the diversity of voices which are provided by community television services. TELUS admits that an increasingly consolidated media communication sector, it is essentially important to prioritize information sources which are independent from the large media conglomerates. The second reason for its position in the hearing is that we do not believe that subsidizing traditional news models is sustainable, nor do we believe that subsidies would constitute good public policy, given the changing technologies and consumer behaviors. For example, Statistic Canada reported a considerable decline in viewership on news on television, falling from 90% in 2003 to 78% in 2013. There is no doubt that the proliferation of media news information sources is at the root of this decline, but there's also the rise of social media and the increase of sharing on video platforms that does account for such a decline. TELUS knows from experience that Optic Local programming has the power to build an understanding and empathy between diverse community elements and inspire citizens to take action and to better their communities. Many of the Optic Local stories are shared through social media, and they strike a chord, so to speak, in highlighting important societal issues, not typically covered by mainstream media. The short, shareable programs of Optic Local therefore enhance the awareness of people, events, and issues in our communities. Consider, for example, the social impact of the short documentary produced for Optic Local called East Side Stories, which chronicles the spirit and struggles of the residents of Vancouver's downtown East Side. The program was viewed by tens of thousands of viewers and shared by many of these viewers and had a strong impact on the understanding in that area. Indeed, the producer of that series indicated that many viewers have stated that the content has changed their views on the homeless and opened their eyes to the gentrification issues of the downtown East Side and some of the grassroots initiatives popping up in the community. Another example of the positive social impact of Optic Local programming is the short documentary about Staff Sergeant Baltej Dillon, the first Sikh RCMP officer permitted to wear a turban as part of his uniform. TELUS posted this program on its Facebook page and it's reached over 33,000 viewers, many of whom also shared the stories with their own networks and left positive comments on the site. This demonstrates that these are important stories to tell, and we're encouraged to see that we can amplify their impact through social media. We welcome the opportunities presented by new technologies and platforms that are enabling the creation and viewing of innovative forms of local programming. And we embrace future opportunities as they emerge. And here I'm really going to push the boundaries, but in a recent TED Talk, filmmaker Chris Milk spoke on creating the ultimate empathy machine by filming in virtual reality. Specifically, he described using virtual reality technology to shoot his film of a young girl living in a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. This allowed viewers, or more accurately participant in this virtual reality experience, to not only witness the experience of her on screen, but essentially to climb through the screen and live the experience on the other side. What a powerful tool to truly engage viewers in creating the empathy that is essential to positive action. In conclusion then, TELUS believes it's essential for this committee to examine all the forms of local media, including those that are breaking away from traditional journalism formats, as this can create the impetus for positive social change. The point is that there is no longer a better or best way to convey news and information. TELUS hopes that the committee's study on media and local communities will embrace the development of non-traditional platforms and formats and distribution methods to better engage citizens, bring them together, and ignite positive social change in communities across Canada. Thank you. Be pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you very much. That was well done, 8 minutes. So I would like to move now to the questions for 7 minutes. And again, I would like to remind both the people who are answering the question and those who are asking the questions to be short and to try and get in as many things as you can in that 7 minutes. Thank you. So Ms. Debussen for the Liberal Party.
Thank you, and thank you for that outline. It was really informative and helpful. My first question actually is about something I've been reading about recently, about a Rogers program to provide subsidized internet service to people in community housing in some provinces. I believe it's 3 provinces right now that it's offered. Does TELUS have a similar type of program available for subsidizing low-income people to receive internet?
TELUS certainly has has looked at launching various programs, and we have offered numerous grants to community. We have a system for philanthropic activities that we administer through community boards. Various boards across the country are comprised of both members of the community as well as TELUS representatives, and we decide on what grassroots charities within those communities will receive funding. Millions of dollars have been given over the past I don't know how many years since we've been operating these community boards, and those go to the grassroots charities who can then determine how best to disperse. Okay. And it does at times include in-kind services.
Just because my understanding, I believe the CRTC is actually right now doing a Let's Talk Broadband investigation that's looking at ensuring the availability of affordable internet services to all Canadians. I expect you will be probably presenting that as well.
Yes, we will.
And will you have any comments that you can share with us right now about how to increase affordable broadband access across Canada?
I would hate to preempt my colleagues who will be speaking next week at the CRTC hearing. Certainly this is an important issue, and one that we believe is dealt with. It's an important social issue for all to have access to broadband, but we also need to keep in mind the tremendous investments that have made through private investments already, and Canadians have significant access to broadband as it is, but we do have some thoughts on providing special assistance to those in need.
All right. You had talked about providing your materials or your content from Optic TV on YouTube. How is that monetized? Just once you put it on YouTube, how do you develop any kind of money from that?
Well, first off, our community programming service is not monetized. Instead, it is a public service that we offer to communities that we serve. So, in part, it is part of our philanthropic efforts in all of the various communities. Also, it's part of the required contribution that all broadcast distributors must make into the Canadian broadcasting system. So, those funds to create this content, which happens to be local content, is part of that contribution system. And we believe, instead of maintaining exclusivity over that content and using it to attract people to our own broadcasting distribution service, which is what other cable companies generally tend to do, instead, we find that if we're going to use so-called public funds for the creation of this programming, it should be made available to all, which is why we make it available on other platforms than our Optic TV. It's not just our Optic TV subscribers who have access to this programming.
All right. You've talked about this Optic TV and then it being available on social media networks. Do you provide funding to other forms of community media other than this TV?
Other than TV?
Like other ways of reaching people other than through TV?
Right. Essentially, all of our funding goes for Optic Local is a television platform. So it is video-based, available on various other platforms, but it is a video service. So if you're asking if we contribute to print media, only through our other philanthropic efforts, to the extent that there might have been some communities that have sought assistance for.
You've mentioned your philanthropic activities quite a bit. Can you describe some of them? Give me some examples so that we can know. In particular, you've mentioned about trying to increase availability when I first asked my first question to people who may not be able to afford internet service, and you mentioned some of your grants, but do you have any specific examples of the types of grants you've given?
Most of the grants go to the grassroots organizations in the community, and they are determined from the ground up. They are determined by the communities themselves. I can give you examples in Ottawa. For example, I was a member of the TELUS Community Board here, and we've received anything from applications for assisting in special needs schools to helping to create some projects for underserved youth in various areas. So they're not necessarily some are completely unrelated to our telecommunications business. And I don't want to mix the two. They could combine, but I don't want to necessarily mix the two. But we do have other programs as well.
As part of that, have you analyzed what the need is? Like, do you have Or do you have
Each community board certainly does extensive research, and the composition of these community boards themselves, being some of the very prominent members of the community here in Ottawa. We had the head of the United Way, for example, who obviously has a very keen understanding of what the need in the community.
So those are the outside organizations, but I'm wondering, TELUS is an active player in this industry, someone who understands the industry quite well as far as what the availability of internet is out there. Have you analyzed
the need for internet? Yes, absolutely. Yeah. That is something that we analyzed, and we will be presenting on those matters at the CRTC. And I really don't want to preempt my colleagues.
I'm not trying to preempt your colleagues, but it's also a matter for what we're looking at here, because what we're talking about is the fact that we've been hearing from many witnesses about a shift towards digital. So it's not a matter of preempting, but it also covers what we're looking at when we're looking at what we're going to recommend down the line.
Absolutely. And I would comment that in the recent CRTC broadcasting monitoring report, they did note that there is significant use of internet. So the usage itself by Canadians should also be a clear indicator that there is availability of broadband for if Canadians are using it. Obviously, we're having there's less of a problem than what we might otherwise consider.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bruson. Thank you. Now we go to Mr. Waugh for the Conservatives.
Thank you, and thank you for your presentation. I'm just going to pick up on Madame de Bruson on who's controlling this. This is the big thing in media right now. You can say anything you can socially and hide. We have seen that on Twitter, we've seen it on Facebook, we have seen it everywhere. So who regulates? I know that you're just a carrier. You said you're really not a broadcaster other than Optic TV. So do you pay anyone with Optic TV to do a presentation? Or like who's regulating what you're putting on YouTube? Who's regulating what you're doing?
So we're not a broadcaster to the extent that we don't own any licensed programming service. Our community programming service, however, is we do have people who manage that service. Frédéric April is here. He manages the Quebec Ma Communauté side. Yep. And we have others that manage the Optic Local. How many managers of
how many people do you have?
Employed probably, let's say, about 20 or so. But
across the country in Quebec, Alberta, and BC.
Who manage the actual service. But as I indicated, we rely for the production of the programming. We rely on independent producers whom we fund. These are producers.
You fund those through this 5% or whatever you...
Correct.
Okay. How much would that pool be?
Overall?
Yeah.
Per year?
Yeah.
They're over somewhere around 7 million last year.
Okay. See, part of broadcasting, and you're a little bit different than Bell, I think, than Rogers, and certainly Shaw, because you're more of an internet, and now you've got into this Optic TV. My question is, you've just got into Quebec, we've seen, so do you offer local news then in both English and French in the province of Quebec since you just got into there?
I'd like to point out, in Quebec, we offer our Optic TV service only in certain areas, not across the province. Those areas are mostly around Rimouski, and there's not a lot of demand for English language programming in those areas.
Which we've just heard from your previous people. Will you offer English then? Being you are a carrier, it is your responsibility, I think, in front of this commission. And, you know, you go see the CRTC. I think it is your responsibility to serve the province of Quebec, since you've moved into Quebec, that you serve it in both languages.
We certainly offer all of the programming services available in Quebec, so that all of our subscribers have access to every single news service and other programming service in French and in English. We offer a full complement of all programming services. So CTV, TVA, all of the services. There's no doubt about that. Our community programming service, however, so in the city of Rimouski, for example, at this point, all of the applications that have come to us for creation of programming have been in French. Should we receive any applications for creating English language programming, we would be more than happy to entertain that request.
But as a carrier, isn't that your responsibility to reach out to the community? You talked about your management level, which is fine. We've seen lots of management levels in broadcasting in this country. But how about those on the ground? Because we just heard from the Quebec people before you, there are no broadcasters coming up in the province of Quebec. So what are you doing to help that industry out?
From our community programming service?
From your community. What are you doing to nourish the broadcasters of the business?
So we do a significant amount of outreach to find the local producers that are in our communities. And at this time, those producers do happen to be Francophone, as I said, given the regions that we serve. Once we move into larger metropolitan areas, that may very well change, and we do intend to serve our communities in the languages in which they, in the languages of the community. So, for example, in Vancouver, we offer services in numerous languages, French, English, Mandarin. So we do spend an awful lot of time in understanding who we are serving and serving them to the best of our abilities. It just so happens that the region that we serve happens to be very, very Francophone.
Yeah. No, that's good. Now, do you pay anybody locally? You've got this management, 20 managers you mentioned across Canada, so you're into community TV. Do you pay anyone other than the producers to put something on YouTube or whatever you're putting, Optic TV? Does anyone operate cameras for you, or you have no studio, nothing, right? Or what do you have?
So, no, generally we pay the producers who have their own equipment.
Yeah, okay, so that's what you...
So these are, small producers who have their own equipment and generally have their staff. They hire their own actors, they hire their own producers and writers, and depending on the programming that they create.
Yeah. It's interesting because CRTC's talking about high-speed internet yesterday, and they kind of backed away from that. What's your thoughts on that? Because you're not reaching a lot of people other than Rimouski in Quebec, for an example.
Our thoughts on high-speed internet?
Yeah, high-speed internet, because if you're playing stuff on YouTube and you're in rural Quebec, if you're in rural Alberta, if you're in rural BC, you need high-speed internet to download a lot of this stuff.
We absolutely agree with that. And in fact, most recently we announced $4.9 billion investment in Alberta throughout the province to increase our fiber optics in all the communities. Announcements were out last year for Quebec and previously in British Columbia. So we're investing billions of dollars into the network that will provide the highest speeds possible. So do we believe in high-speed internet? Absolutely. We also believe that private investment is the best way to achieve the highest connectivity for our country.
That's good. Thank you.
Thank you. Now, Mr. Nantel for the New Democratic.
Thank you. Merci beaucoup d'être ici ce matin.
Thank you very much for being here this morning. If you need to have an earpiece, you know, like many others, that there are challenges that face you. With respect to the CRTC, as soon as it's opened up to all the competitors as well. I thank you for what you are doing, because you are one of the few companies that have acted in such a way. You decided to invest in Quebec. You bought Quebec Téléphone. You've got the 411 service in North America that goes directly to you, from Chicago to you. If you were, I believe that's the case, but I'm not sure. But I believe it. Yes, I have staff who are familiar with the region, and it goes directly to you. You are the one who thinks out of the box. And I believe that gives greater access, easier access to subscribers. And what you have done is quite innovative. I'd like to ask you this. In your programming, you've answered my colleague here's questions very well indeed, in that you say you deal directly with producers to fill the media space. So in terms of a budget for production, they do it. When you send, though, something to YouTube, And when the ordinary person views it and downloads it or uses it, are there any ad revenues that come back to you? There must be some small share of the budget in your company that is based on YouTube benefits. We don't have an active sale of advertisements in that. Of course, once you have a YouTube service, there is a very small return on that. But it's really, you just sort of round it off. Well, I want to ask you this. You've invested, as you have said, a lot of money, and you've also done major things in Quebec. In 2011, 2020, you foresee some $2 billion investments in Quebec. But have you done similar things elsewhere in Canada? Well, we've just made an announcement for Alberta. And yes, we have made announcements in the past and will continue to do so concerning our investments. They will continue year over year, the investments, I mean. Because these are services that will be online, and whether it's the media or any type of service, banking services, for example, or government services, bandwidth is extremely important. So we will continue rather to make the necessary investments to meet the demand. Are you familiar with community life? Because the goal here is to ensure that we will be able to preserve community life. We want to preserve the very local dimension of news provision, the language, and so on, that promotes the vitality of small communities. I come from a Francophone community that I'm aware of in Edmonton, where there are major challenges in terms of preserving their language. You are from Montreal, or do you live in Rimouski, or do you come from Timucua? I didn't understand your question. Well, I'm coming back to these communities because there is this innovative vision that you have. You don't produce content, though. This is a situation that is very refreshing. You are very neutral then. You are not trying to place your content. But we can ask ourselves now, do you have any comments to make or observations concerning what our committee should do to ensure that local media continue to, well, exist and flourish? Well, I would say it's independence, first of all, and training. Independence, you want to be sure that the training and information is not controlled by the highly concentrated media in Canada, whether it's the written press or the broadcast press. Broadcast media. This is something that is important. You have services like the CBC, yes, but you also need services like Optic Local, which provides another type of information from the vertically integrated media. It goes without saying that when there is media concentration, particularly with vertical integration, where the networks are owned by and inhabited by the very owners that control those networks, it is a different situation. I have a minute left, I believe. Perhaps your colleague could, Monsieur Avril, could answer this question. With respect to the consumption of media in your networks, is there a high point? Do you have a certain time when there is a congestion on the media? Well, no, I don't think. Well, I know that you wouldn't be cutting back on the media, certainly. But do you see that there is that there's a higher audience, say for Pierre Dion, from 7 to 8 o'clock at night. Well, with respect to prime time, I guess you could say that there is a larger viewership, and the peaks for the prime time are very important. Yes, thank you.
For the Liberals.
Merci beaucoup de votre présence.
Thank you for being with us this morning. We do appreciate it. I'm particularly interested in internet access. That is broadband in communities, in rural areas. We are talking about local access here, and I'm speaking of perhaps not just for myself, but for other areas in Canada where there's no access to this. I would like to hear what you intend to do. As Mr. Nantel was saying, some $2 billion worth of investment in Quebec has been mentioned here. What type of investment is being made in terms of broadband? My first question. And now my second question with respect to the $500 million that appear in the budget for digital infrastructure and for setting up broadband. How will that money be able to help you better connect Canadians? With respect to your first question that dealt with the investments that are being made in Quebec, will it be in broadband? I would say yes, to a large extent it will be, because there's a great need to continue there. There is a very, very marked demand for broadband coverage, whether it's for the media or for other types of services. So certainly this will be a significant investment in terms of Optique or others to ensure that there is access to broadband in these other areas. Now, concerning your second question, what was it? The government's investment in the media, that is the monies that will be given to it. Well, this will be a very significant investment to allow for the continuing of providing infrastructure. Certainly, those investments by the government are very necessary, and they will be added to the private sector investment that is being made. But yes, thank you. We are interested in the cost of access, the cost of providing broadband for people in these areas, because this is an issue. It's not the same everywhere throughout Canada if you make a comparison. How do you see that approach in terms of cost? We want to have the best pricing available for our constituents, for Canadians, and we want government investment to bear fruit. But how do you see this in terms of cost for citizens? Well, all the industry has looked at the issue of pricing, bundles for certain services and others. There is a clear look at the various levels of services. We want to know what will be done, who will be heavy downloaders or who will not be, who will use another service perhaps less heavily, who wants to have the service to access YouTube or see the news, but they don't necessarily want to stream Netflix all the time. So, okay. In your presentation, you said that you did have some reservations with respect to what the CRTC could bring to local news providers in terms of subsidies. Yes, I can elaborate on this. When you look at what can be added to what we contribute to programming, community programming, that fund that the CRTC is looking at as a possible way of reallocating funding to local television undertakings. For the most part, it is something that involves the networks as well as the media services, Bell, for example, and others. They can, within their own company, provide certain incentives to say, for example, that one service needs heavy subsidies, while another in-house may not. But there is also the danger that those monies will go and perhaps affect the independence of the information that is provided by local coverage, local broadcasting. And third, these grants and subsidies that could be provided for traditional news television stations will not be an agent of change, of necessary change, in the same way that in the past they weren't able to provide change for the future. They might not provide the best policy at the moment.
C'est tout? Oui?
Thank you. Yes.
Now, thank you. We're going to the second round, which is a 5-minute round, and we begin again with Mr. Maguire for the Conservatives.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And just to carry on with that, thank you very much for your presentation. The funds that have been made available previously and now by the new government as well for internet expansion into rural communities, into more remote areas, is probably best described, or I'll let you describe it, but my analogy would be that this helps you simply because you can reach more people in a faster way. Can you expand on that?
I'm sorry, I'm having difficulty. I couldn't actually hear your question. I think I better put the the hearing aid on.
Yeah, just the expansion of internet throughout Canada. Basically, it helps you folks just because you can reach more people. Is that accurate? That you can reach more folks with it?
Certainly, it's reaching more people. It's also increasing the speed and the capacity in certain areas.
Yeah, I think it's the speed that is the big area. We want people to be not only to be able to have access here, but to do business at a faster speed as well. You mentioned that increasing affordable broadband accessibility was important and keeping private broadband investments in mind. Can you just expand on that, how important that is? I know you've put a lot of money into Quebec as well. You mentioned the provinces out west putting money in, and can you expand on other areas that you've done the same?
So for broadband expansion, those are obviously areas where we offer consumer internet. Otherwise, we are a national wireless company, and we have made significant investments in order to increase the capacity of our wireless network for both telephony services and data services, which are increasingly, Canadians are huge adopters of wireless data, and so lots of investments have gone into our networks to improve the speed and capacity of our wireless networks across the country.
And you mentioned the positive social change that could come out in your recommendations in your final comments today as well in regards to examining all forms of transmission and of broadcasting. Can you just expand a little bit on that as well? I'll give you an opportunity to finalize some of your thoughts on that.
Thank you. Yes, one of the points that we really wanted to make is that traditional journalism is not the only way to convey information. In fact, there are many it's not just means of distribution, but many formats, from comedy to short-form documentaries to opinion pieces, all of which serve to inform people and create the locally informed citizen. We shouldn't dismiss those types of programming from our review of local news, because ultimately it's not just about local news, but all the ways by which our communities are being informed. If people aren't watching the news anymore and watching TV news, certainly Statistics Canada is telling us that over their significant decline over the last 10 years, then but we know that TV viewership is up, then they're watching other forms. Part of it, a significant part is entertainment, but I think there's also a significant part in the rise of documentaries, the rise of all kinds of other ways, and of getting informed. And when you look at these new technologies like VR, and I do encourage you all to watch this TED Talk from Chris Milk, this is the importance of getting information and not just having facts told to us, which may or may not resonate with us as people, but getting an emotional connection with the information, that the way it's presented, can ultimately lead to better outcomes. So should we be focusing from a public policy perspective on creating programming that merely provides facts, or on the presentation of facts that may create that emotional connection that will ultimately lead to positive social change? Ultimately, what is the public policy goal of providing news? Is it to create locally informed citizens who will take their responsibilities for better communities in hand?
Thank you very much. I think we should move now to Mr. O'Regan for the Liberals.
Let me ask you, I mean, as an internet service provider, but one, different from your colleagues, I guess, in terms of actually producing content, what sort of responsibilities, I think, weigh on you to provide locally prescient information to your customers?
As a community programming service provider, all of our information is locally relevant. So we're looking to obviously have issues that resonate more broadly than the community, but we're seeking the producers who will best address issues in the community that they perceive in the community. So it's not a top-down where TELUS from our corporate offices are telling producers, create a story on this, but rather a grassroots up of producers. Here, we're here, we have funding to give you. What do you think is important for you to tell your communities? What would you like to talk about? And I think it's important to have that as a counterweight to so many other top-down media that we have in this country.
What are your customers telling you about their access to broadband, whether the quality of it and whether or not they feel they consider it a right?
So first off, our customers, we listen to our customers, very seriously, and which is one of the reasons why we have one of the lowest complaints status with the Commissioner for Complaints for Telecommunication Services, the CCTS, and whenever we do receive these comments, we take action on them on a regular basis. So our customers generally have shown a high degree of satisfaction with the services that we offer. We know, however, that we need to keep increasing, and we know that there are areas and pockets where we need to continue to invest. And that's why we were continuously making these announcements of new investments, because we know there can never be enough.
And on that note, then, what are your thoughts, perhaps personally, but certainly in behalf of TELUS, your thoughts on broadband being considered a right of a Canadian?
Certainly, there's, as the chairman of the CRTC said on the opening day of the hearing yesterday, there is the want and there's the need. And broadband itself, there are certain minimal aspects can be considered an absolute need, but there's a whole lot of want in the whole broadband space. So there's a spectrum that we need to consider, and we can't simply say that the broadband, everyone deserves the highest possible capacity and speed of broadband. It's simply not possible. We are constantly improving and those improvements will migrate throughout the country, but not at the same steady pace. You will always have certain pockets that have better broadband than others. While there's a certain minimum that needs to be met, there's also significant capacity that will continue to be well beyond that minimal, and that we will address from a competitive standpoint. We know that we can sell this broadband, and so we will continue to invest for that reason. But we will also ensure that no one is left behind.
How would you define need as opposed to want?
The minimal standards are certainly being discussed right now in the hearing over in Gatineau right now, and I wouldn't want to venture to say any specific amount at this time, but the information provided by the CRTC at the beginning of the hearing certainly does indicate that some minimums have been met in Canada.
Okay, how would you define minimum?
Define the minimum of need? I think it will depend on region to region. Certainly, having access to downloading 4K content is not a need.
Could that change?
Yes, I'm sure it will continue to evolve year after year, month after month, which is, again, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but why investments need to be made. As more services and more data-intensive services continue to proliferate, yes, we have to, just like we need to keep upgrading our browsers, we will need to upgrade our networks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Reagan, and I want to thank TELUS for presenting to us. I do have a question, though. Ms. Debruson asked you a question about the fund that you use to bring in your local programming through local producers, etc. Do you consider that to be your contribution as a cable network towards a 5%? Is that part of your 5% contribution since you don't have a broadcast piece?
That's correct. So, as a broadcasting distribution undertaking, we are required to spend 5% of gross revenues on our on various efforts. So, some of it is directed to the CMF, the Canada Media Fund. Some of it goes to our community.
Now, part of that 5%, 2.5% of it, I think, is supposed to be news. So, how are you contributing to that news piece?
At this time, for community programming, there is no requirement for news.
Under the Cable and Television Fund, there is, no?
No.
Are you certain of that?
There's no requirement for how the community television programming is spent. So we have to spend. So we direct 2% to the CMF, another to an independent production fund, which focuses actually on health programming. We launched the TELUS Fund a few years ago. Then the rest of that amount is now directed to our community programming service, Optic Local, and there are no direct requirements for news programming. Community programming is divided in two portions. Half of it, at least, for us it's closer to 80 to 90%, is what's called access programming, where independent producers come up with the idea and are the producers of those of that programming, and the other half would be TELUS produced. But we have very little TELUS
Thank
produced.
you. It's all very innovative what you presented to us, but I just wanted to ask a question. You referred to the TED Talks about the idea of this emotional attachment with the community, and therefore you said that it's not necessarily about giving the community the facts as they stand. Do you feel that simply looking at emotional content without looking at the factual content is actually appropriate? I think Mr. Waugh kind of referred to that, in that if you're going to reach people emotionally, do you also need to do so with a certain amount of factual information and not simply emotional information?
Absolutely. And the point was not merely to be emotional, but these are documentaries that he's creating on, in this case it was a documentary on the life in a Syrian refugee camp in Jordan. There is a lot of facts to be had there, but rather than present them in a newscast as a talking head, which you will absorb that information in a different way than if you actually put on the virtual reality gizmo and enter that world and see for yourself, that to be told that there is no very little drinking water or any access to hygiene is one thing, but to actually see the conditions through this virtual reality is
Thank you, Ms. Neeson. We now have about 1 minute to go, and I'm going to use this time to make an announcement. I want to remind everyone that there is a briefing from Heritage Canada for the members of this committee that was meant to be at 3:15. Because of the votes, that's been pushed to 3:45. It's at 1 Wellington C120. So just to remind you of that, and thank you very much. Motion to adjourn, Mr. Van Loon. Meeting adjourned.